Was the President's State of the Nation address a repetition of promises heard in the past? Did the President acknowledge any of his failures and challenges? Is the government's National Development Plan the answer to the woes of the country? Are the opposition parties fair in giving the speech a thumbs down? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. President Jacob Zuma stepped up to the podium of the National Assembly to deliver his State of the Nation address on Tuesday evening. The ruling party had high praise for President Zuma's State of the Nation address, while opposition leaders described it as mediocre and muted. In his speech, President Zuma acknowledged that the prolonged and violent strikes, as well as a shortage of electricity, are partly to blame for slow economic growth. Today on Question Time, we probe deeper and find out if the speech has laid a substantial plan of action in addressing the challenges faced by the country. My guests in studio are Lebohang Pheko. She's an economic and political analyst, and Nompumelelo Runji. She's also a political analyst. Ladies, welcome to the show. And there it was, the first State of the Nation address of the fifth administration. President Zuma, coming from his ill health, stepped up, and whilst he was walking, the EFF sat down, actually. They didn't even give him that much respect. What did you read out of that?
It's to be expected, isn't it? I mean, this is a dissident group which has emerged from the ANC, a very fractious recent history, and Juju being the kind of grandstander he is and the political opportunist that he has proved to be and the political operator that he has proved to be, it's in keeping with the general trend.
I'm sure that would have interested public relations practitioners, but you aren't one. You are more of a serious person. What did you make of the speech? I
think the speech is not dissimilar to what we've been hearing before. And I think we need to really remember what the State of the Nation is about. The State of the Nation address, ideally, is something that is a call to arms to the nation. It is supposed to be the opportunity for the President to take us into his confidence, to perhaps indicate what the road ahead lies for the next 12 months, but also to really encourage the nation to feel encouraged, revitalized, and in some way inspired as participants and active citizens in this project called country, called state. We don't really get much of that during the SONA addresses of late, particularly during this administration.
Yeah, we call this a new administration. But when you listen to President Zuma's speech, the only thing new about the administration and the only thing new about what he's talking about is the language that is being used, the word radical that is being bandied about. But just like Lebohang has just mentioned, we don't get a sense of a grand vision and strategy behind which South Africans can rally and support the President in his leadership. We don't get a clear sense of what is unique and new that this administration will bring to the country.
But, he talks of the NDP. This is a very famous document, I must say. Everything, you say jobs, NDP. Security, NDP. Skills development, NDP. So I don't think I would agree with you. He did go into the NDP quite a bit.
It's true that the National Development Plan contains a blueprint, for solving many of the challenges that the country faces. But like we had just said earlier, the State of the Nation is not a platform to give us a detailed rendition of what is contained in the NDP. It is an opportunity for the President to stand there and tell the country what his vision is as a leader and to call us, as Lebohang has said, to arms, to say, this is what we're going to do. This is the program of the state. This is the opportunity you have as citizens to get involved. It is not about the nitty-gritties and the details. Okay. That's not the purpose of the State of the Nation.
Now, Lebohang, the VET's chancellor or principal, Professor Adam Habib, says, it was positive and people like you are completely unfair.
Are we? Positive in what respect? I mean, I suppose what we're looking for...
He says, I'll tell you in what respect.
Okay.
He says there was an acknowledgement of economic crisis. I think there was commitment to resolving the energy crisis. There was an explicit commitment to shale gas and nuclear energy. There was an acknowledgement of the crisis in municipalities. Is that enough, though?
Well, you know, Mpho, to describe and to characterize situations is hardly the same as handling and addressing them. And it's one thing to list verbatim every municipality which has some form of an issue in service delivery or some crisis in leadership or governance of some sort, and then suggest some sort of remedial measure live on TV. But I mean, of course, in the next 18 months or so, we'll be curious as to whether or not these remedial measures have actually been effective. So I think being descriptive is hardly the same as being effective. And I think that most of the sonas, and I think in keeping with a lot of the speeches that we've heard over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, are descriptive, almost bullet point, tick box approach to the bases that need to be covered. But when one looks at the quantifiable measures and evaluation that should then take place and follow, there's very little. And in fact, what we have instead is a year-to-year recycling, perhaps, of the same issues, perhaps slightly different iterations, such as this year, where there's an emphasis on the energy sector, an emphasis on service delivery, an emphasis on youth development, for example, but nothing particularly that is enhancing the forward-looking trajectory. And a few kind of sound bites emerging from the NDP across reference. But I think, speaking of the NDP, let's not forget that the NDP, it is a blueprint, but it's descriptive. It does not give us any measurable objectives. So we can't necessarily use that per se as the foundation on which we're standing as a development instrument on its own.
What happens, I mean, after the president has spoken? Where do things go wrong? Because there seems to be, you know, an agreement between you two here that, you know, when it comes to the implementation, somehow things get stuck. Where do things go wrong?
Well, if you look at the center of power in our country, a lot of the time we look to the presidency as being the sole receptacle of responsibility and power. But that is the wrong place to look. We have a very strong ruling party. And in fact, when you look at the State of the Nation address and you look at the recent NEC Lekgotla that was held, you will find more in terms of strategy in the NEC Lekgotla than what you find in the State of the Nation address, for instance. So we have a situation at times where the state is held at ransom or held to ransom by the imperatives of the ruling party.
No, but it's the same people who sit in the ANC Lekgotla who would go to cabinet Lekgotla.
It's the same thing. Let me give a specific example, for instance. If you look at the handling of our long-running platinum strike, currently the longest strike in the country, this has been running for 5 months, right? We have seen little to no intervention from the state. Then Minister Ngwakora Matlodi takes office, and he takes it upon himself to make it an objective to intervene in the strike. A week or so later, we hear a directive from the NEC of the ANC which says Minister Ramatlodi must be careful in the way that he intervenes in the strike, lest he poisons the labor relations environment. So there, same people as you say, but we see a dichotomy of strategy and vision and how the state should handle certain issues.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we return, I've got a couple of questions which our viewers have actually posted, but we'll talk about that only after the break. We're going to take a quick break. Please don't go away.
Catch all 64 games of the FIFA World Cup live from 12 June to 13 July on SABC TV and our 19 radio stations. SABC, the official broadcaster of the 2014 FIFA World Cup Brazil.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time today. Leboam Peko and Nompumele Runchi, political analysts and economic analysts. They are my guests now. But before we go into the show, let's have a look at this insert.
We have put in place a program of action based on the ANC's manifesto and the National Development Plan. The economy takes center stage in this program. It remains our strong belief that the most effective weapon in the campaign against poverty is the creation of decent work, and that creating work requires faster economic growth. We have set a strong target of 5% by 2019. To achieve this, we will embark on various measures and interventions to jumpstart the economy. We have set this target during a difficult period. The economy has grown below its potential over the last 3 years.
Okay, that is just a clip from that speech by the president. Now, I guess it also takes us back to that NDP that we were talking about. Is this an acknowledgement of fault by the president or by the ruling party or by government? I don't know which one would be most suitable.
That's a good question. I mean, there are three things. The one is that we've tended to conflate the role of all three, the role of parliament, the state, the government, and the executive. And these are four very distinct but interlinking entities. And I think it's bound to happen. It's inevitable because we have a governing party which has a very strong, still has a very overwhelming majority, still over 60%. Yeah. So it's inevitable that there will be that conflation. However, I don't really see this as a taking per se, as an accepting as responsibility, because it is often and still shrouded in the language of being linked to global imperatives, the economic meltdown, the European austerity measures, which have also, of course, impacted on our import and export regime. So it's not per se about any particular person or entity within the government, the state, or the executive saying that our policies have failed per se, or perhaps have not been as effective. There's still the tendency to apportion responsibility to exogenous factors, rather than focusing on the kind of internal fiscal and monetary measures which might have been able to mediate and mitigate against some of obviously the damage caused by the meltdown. And remember that this comes in at a time when a lot of other African countries are growing. Yeah. We alone are the ones who are in a form of slow but sure recession that we seem unable to emerge from. And I mean, we've been in recession for about 4 to 8 quarters, and we need to own up to that. And I think take the necessary remedial steps accordingly.
Nompumelelo, what would have made you happy? We'll listen to this clip and you say, I'm not so impressed. What would have made you happy?
Well, I'd like to return to the question you just asked, Lebohang. What we see in our country, rather than an honest reflection on what has happened in the last 20 years, and a taking stock and responsibility and owning up to what has happened. We see this new language of a new phase in our transformation, a new phase in our economic growth. So we see a government that continuously talks about this newness, this novelness.
Hey, those are politicians.
This radical, this radicalness. But it's actually, in fact, has been the same policies for the last 15 years. We've not seen a policy shift. And that's where the problem is. The government needs to sit and actually say to itself, what we've done for the last 15 years has not been working. It's been the cause of our slow growth. It's been the cause of the problems that we are seeing in our communities. What must we do to change that? It doesn't help to just speak of radical change. Radical change needs a catalyst. And that catalyst would be to sit down and review what has gone wrong with the policies that we currently have in place, because they're definitely not working.
And, calling something radical, throwing words and language of radicalism doesn't make it so. Radical means fundamental.
Yeah.
It means an alternative.
Yeah.
It means a tangible manifest shift from what has been to what should be or could be. Yeah. So calling and of course the word radical in our context, in the South African context, has all sorts of other connotations of being, slightly left, slightly, very progressive. Yes, Amandla, what. Yeah. But, it in fact means something that is, in economic language, it is to do with fundamental shift in fiscal and monetary instruments.
Is it happening?
Oh, no, it hasn't happened for a long time. In fact, you see, to go back to the question that you asked about, executive powers, state powers, government, through the eye of the needle has been the main instrument, government and party instrument, which has been the roadmap for the past 10 years or so, okay, in different formations. And so much has been extrapolated from there to the NDP, and it seems as though every SONA, bits of these documents are just transposed and located within the State of the Nation address. And then, of course, other bits from the party political manifesto. A SONA is not a manifesto. It really shouldn't be. It should be, again, something that we get behind. And I think that if we keep on conflating these different instruments, playing with language, playing with words, we go from RDP to SGISA to NDP, etc. But they're very substantively similar. There is no radical anything about any of them per se.
Do people understand what is supposed to come out of SONA?
I don't think so.
Because, we've had it shifted from a morning, ceremony to evening so that the people can take part.
You see, for people to know what the purpose of SONA is, the president would have to set the tone. Now, in his previous this was the 7th SONA that he's done. What he's done to it is just a regurgitation of these policies that we've just been speaking about. It's been a regurgitation of ANC manifesto after ANC manifesto. So if you've been listening to the 7 speeches in the last 7 years, you get the sense that that's what the State of the Nation address is about. And unfortunately, without an example, from the state president himself, it would be very difficult for people to understand what the purpose of a SONA actually is. And you must remember, we're a new democracy. Okay. We're only 20 years old. So the current leadership models for us what these different institutions are supposed to mean for us.
After the break, we'll talk about some of the issues that were raised by the opposition political parties, including labor brokers, the economy, and all that. But only after the break. Please don't go away.
The shortage of nurses, places those nurses who are working under such pressure.
To have one registered nurse looking after a ward full of patients, of over 40 patients, is unreasonable.
But Africa has made tremendous progress. In the year 2012, there were only 50,000 children. 50,000 children too many, but only 50,000 children that died of measles in the whole of Africa, compared to 330,000 in the year 2000.
For all your health issues, join Dr. Sello every Saturday, 9 to 10 a.m. CAT.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. Umpumelelo Runji and Lebam Peku, this economic and political analyst. They are my guests today. Let's look at some of the issues that were raised by political parties. And not that, I mean, we expect political parties to agree with the ANC in Parliament, but I would suppose, I mean, they raised some of very pertinent issues. The labor brokers issue is still very high on some of them's agenda. They were very disappointed that it wasn't raised, and I'm now talking about the federation, the labor movement. Do you think there's a commitment to get this out of the way, or it's something that's going to be here for some time to come?
That is really linked to the structure of the economy and the structure of our labor relations. And again, these sorts of issues don't arise instantly, and they're not they can't be disappeared by silence. And unfortunately, it's become slightly unfashionable to talk about labor brokers. Instead, we've now obfuscated that conversation under the broad remit of decent work. And we haven't even managed to define for ourselves. I have a problem with the definition of what decent work is. I don't know what indecent work is. So for every action, there should be a reaction. So we've taken, ILO, International Labour Organization language, hook, line, and sinker, and we really haven't located within our own context. So that conversation has gotten really lost behind the decent work discourse.
Let's talk about the mining sector, which received some specific attention. Miners will get, I think they'll get to own their own houses. Hostels must now be converted into housing units and all that. Is this in response of the AMCU strike, you think?
Yes and no. These are all good things. They've been contained in mining social labor pacts for quite some time now. The biggest problem has been compliance from mining companies. They've always had the responsibility towards their workers in terms of providing them with decent living conditions. Secondly, also contributing to the mining communities in which they do their business. It's always been contained in those pacts. But the Mineral Resources Department has always had a capacity challenge when it comes to evaluating and monitoring the implementation of those programs. So when the president comes and says we are going to ensure the implementation of these things, it's nothing new. It's not necessarily a response to the AMCU strike, but it will go some way in terms of building confidence amongst those ranks.
Okay.
Yes.
Lebang, Sheila Shopestole says, I liked certain things. Focus on economic transformation, eradication of bucket toilets. Perhaps let's leave this eradication and attention on youth unemployment. When Sheila says focus on economic transformation, is there something she missed here, perhaps?
I suspect so. Perhaps she was hoodwinked by the language of radicalism and the shifting around, the musical chess with the wording and the paragraphs from previous speeches. However, I'm encouraged that there are people who are engaged with and interested in some way in understanding the focus and the impetus for the SONA. That's encouraging. What is not encouraging, however, is the constant, reiteration of what we have heard before. And I think that, again, the economy is in such a state of crisis that it requires more than a surface cursory mention. It really requires much more detailed, embedded resolution, and a sense in which we are going to be given a roadmap and a plan of action over the next, 12 to 36 months. Actually, we're in a very crucial. The next few quarters are extremely crucial.
Ed Astra then says, creating decent work requires a growing economy. And I don't think we're growing at a rate where we could say we're very happy.
Not at all. I mean, in the last quarter, we grew 0.6%. That is well below what we should be growing at. It's even well below the previous estimations that said we would grow at 3%. That's how optimistic we were last year. We brought that down to 2.7%. It's recently been reviewed and revised by agencies like Fitch and what's that other one? Standard & Poor's, who have put us at around 1.7% growth.
Okay.
So we are not going to create those jobs without a growing economy.
Very quickly, we've run out of time. What should South Africans look forward to? What should we really say, okay, out of SONA, this is what we're going to look out for?
Unfortunately, more of the same. You said we should steer away from this issue of sanitation. For instance, in 2009, government moved the deadline for the eradication of bucket toilets to 2014. We're in 2014 now. And we've heard the same government, under the auspices of the ANC, NEC, saying we will not even meet the 2015 Millennium Development Goals, for instance. So we keep moving the goalposts, and that's what we can expect for the next couple of years.
Lewa, quickly.
I think that we need to be able to frame our demands differently. I think as active citizens, as people who care, we need to be able to frame demands and to demand that to demand actions that can be measured and that have finite timelines. We can't really continue with that sort of elasticated wording, elasticated speeches, the cut and paste approach, and most worryingly, the lack of monitoring and evaluation and the lack of consequences when deadlines and deliverables are not met.
Okay. I think we need another show, not just on SONA, but on the economic policies of government. And I promise that I'm going to get you two here.
You're on.
Okay, we on. That was Question Time for today. Please get in touch with us. questiontime@sabc.co.za, our Twitter handle @questiontime24. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.